it's still morning, but my name is Jim Wiseman. I'm the president of Iactp, and it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce our speaker today, former Lieutenant Gary Cornelius, and he's had a long-standing relationship with Iactp, and we're so fortunate to have him do this workshop for us today. And I think it's a very appropriate workshop on stressed out and how we can deal with all the things that we've all been dealing with lately in this crazy 2020. So once again, thank you folks for being here and joining this workshop, and many thanks to Gary for putting this on for us. So Gary, it's all yours, sir.
Okay, thanks, Jim, and I'd like to thank IACT members in attendance, Michael Jones, congratulate Trish Signer for becoming president. And I see some names on the list that I haven't seen in a while. Don Gala, haven't seen you, haven't touched base with you in a while. Mary O'Connor, Daryl Smith does a great job on the journal, and Jim Wiseman. But everybody, thanks for attending and for this opportunity. The title is Stressed Out Strategies for Living and Working in Corrections, and that's going to be the title of the third edition for my book. When I talked to Michael, he said, you want to do a webinar? And I said, well, I've researched a lot of stuff about stress, and I'm putting in the book. So he said, well, let's talk about it. But thanks for that wonderful introduction, Jim, and a little bit about me. I'm a retired deputy sheriff. My corrections career was from 1978 to 2005, but my law enforcement career started in really 1973. So I guess I'm one of the old ones, And I started as a police dispatcher for Allegheny County Police in Pittsburgh, PA, my hometown. So if anybody is from Pittsburgh, there go Steelers. I went to the Secret Service Uniform Division for a couple of years, and I went to a town of Herndon Police Department in Virginia for a couple of years. But I felt this attraction, I guess, calling to work in corrections, because when I went to college, I had a prison warden come in and talk to us, and I thought, wow, that's neat, and it always stayed in the back of my mind to get back in corrections. So in 1978, I went to the Fairfax County Office of the Sheriff, and counting the renovations to the jails and the work release center, I worked in 4 different facilities of that department from 1978, and I retired in February of 2005. And my main career was at the Adult Detention Center, and those are the assignments I had, which were confinement, classification, work release, policy, procedure development, programs director. I was a squad training officer. I was an academy instructor that they call me, and I still do training for 7 academies in Virginia, from in-service and webinars, and also I do basic training when an academy asks me. And tomorrow I'm doing an ethics class in Fredericksburg, Virginia. In 1986, I was fortunate enough to become an adjunct faculty member at George Mason University in Fairfax, which is a pretty good sized university. It has a very, very good criminology, law, and society department. So I taught 4 courses there: jails, community corrections, punishment corrections, and preparation for internships. So I really appreciate the merging of academe and the practitioner side, as I'm a practitioner, but I was fortunate enough to teach college classes, and the research and the information, there's a good blend, and we need each other. Author, wrote a couple things, and I've been with IACTP since 1987, so I go back a ways, and those are the books that that's the third edition of Correctional Officer Practical Guide. Art of the Con, I really enjoyed writing that about offender manipulation. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and the American Jail Cornerstone Modern Corrections from Pearson. But I'm in, if you can follow the cursor there, the Art of the Con, I'm in negotiations to do a third edition of that. Might be for Carolina Academic Press. We're talking to them, and so if anybody has good information on manipulation, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, that's the second edition. I don't have the cover yet for the third, but the third edition will be out next year. And I have a mountain in my office here, and you can't see the piles, but I have a mountain of research material, and like I said, Mike's was kind enough to let me do this and put this together. So we only have an hour, so we're just going to talk about some basic goals. Stress in both life and corrections. The second goal is to understand burnout and PTSD, because that comes up so much in my research. And I want to underlie, the underlying theme of this is trainers. How do you go in and teach a stress class? And I've been teaching stress management now for, I guess, since the mid 90s. And each class is different. It can turn into a gripe session. You have to get people to think, you have to get people to share. And as we all know, law enforcement and corrections, we don't talk about our stress a lot. So, how do you bring that out? And I want to talk about negative coping behaviors and turn them into positive coping behaviors, and making a plan to deal with stress in your life, because everybody has stress. I was in teaching one class, and I said, okay, anybody have some stress in their life they'd like to talk about? You want them to talk and share. And one gentleman, about a 30-year veteran, he said, well, I don't have any stress in my life. I said, okay. I said, with all due respect, I said, did you ever get stuck in a traffic jam? Well, yeah. Did you ever have a flat tire? Well, yeah. Did an inmate ever give you a rough time, make your shift a living hell? Yeah. I said, then you have stress. But the main thing for a trainer is to identify the negative coping behaviors and turn them into positive coping behaviors. And at the start of every class, wherever I'm called to teach, I say, look, I'm here. We're going to talk about some things. Some of these things are not going to be pleasant. I'm not forcing anybody to talk about them. But if you walk out of here at the end of the day and you didn't know something and you know it now, and this is true of any in-service class, you picked up a skill that you didn't know about and you know it now, then I've done my job. So a couple of topics we're going to talk about, stress and stressors, and I'm not going to make it really basic, just a refresher. I think after doing this so many years, you have to talk about that, and we're all trainers. The stress reaction, burnout, you hear that a lot. Well, where's so-and-so? He took a day off, he was burned out. Well, there's a lot underneath the word burnout. And this is probably the big one here, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. We all read once in a while of a cop or a prison officer or a deputy sheriff taking their own life. It's tragic. No job should lead to such a deadly decision like that, but it happens. Coping negatively, and just some discussion about that and how we can be positive, and what is your plan? Because in every class, I said, now what is your plan? What are you going to do? And I said, I don't want you to get up in front of the class and say this, but you have to think, what is your plan? How are you going to cope with this job? And one of the things another thing I preface my classes with is that you are part of a noble profession. And I like doing this for the rookies, the newbies, because you go into a building or into a profession like probation and parole. We should talk more about what they go through, juvenile corrections. You deal with a clientele or go into a building full of that clientele, and they don't like you. They're angry. They don't want to be there. And they're trying to get over on you every chance that they get. And you get up every workday and you go into that environment. That is a noble profession. Some people, some people quit. Some people, you last long enough, you do good things for yourself, you can retire. But the main thing is what is your plan? How are you going to deal with this? So a couple of things I found in my research, and this is in the book. American Psychological Association, they did a study, Stress in America 2019, and 3/4 of the adults in the US reported physical or emotional stress symptoms. And that's probably higher, but in the environment now, as Jim alluded to, this is an interesting year for law enforcement. Not only the police on the street, and God bless them, but the people in the jails and POs and juvenile. This is a year, I have not experienced a year like this. I can't remember a year like this. And a lot of you probably agree. The American Stress Institute 2017 data, 80% of US workers feel stress on the job. And I think probably for corrections, that's higher. That's higher. I don't know of anyone that I have ever met in, I remember that one gentleman I told you about, but usually when I do a class, you know, everybody feels some stress on the job. And one of the things you bring in as a trainer too is the stress at home, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes. So this is the APA study in 2019. This is what people were worrying about. One is money, paying the bills, paying your mortgage. And that's always on people's mind. And that's why a lot of people worked overtime. I knew people in the jail that worked a lot of overtime. I didn't, you know, ask them what their finances were, but I would say, hey, you're working a lot of overtime. Yeah, I need the money. And they would be tired. I remember one time I worked 14 straight days in that jail, 14 without a day off. And I tell my classes, I was clawing at the front door to get the heck out of there after 14 straight days. But some people worry about the work, the job itself. Are they going to have cutbacks? You got to translate this into corrections. When I hear talk about defunding police, I think in Atlanta they were talking about defunding the jail, and I'm thinking, if I had to work in those departments, it's a cause for concern. Family responsibilities. Now we're in the age of COVID, and right out the hallway there, I have a grandson staying with us who's doing he's in 11th grade in high school, and he's on a computer at home doing his schoolwork. But families, you know, two-income families both have jobs, childcare, a lot of family responsibilities, plus the concern of getting COVID, which we're all living with right now. Personal health concerns. Some people that are stressed out, their health suffers. They don't feel well. I know in my case, I'm a former burnout. I burned out. And that's why I got interested in doing this. And there were times that I just didn't feel well. And, you know, you go to the family doctor, there's really nothing wrong with you, but you feel down, you feel sick, you feel drained, you feel nauseous. And some of that is because of the stress that you're going through. And how about health concerns about family? As our parents age, or we have family members that need our help. So these are things people worry about. The economy. Things go up. Things cost more. And these are serious worries. And it magnified recently by the COVID, the civil unrest, anti-law enforcement sentiment. They cause us to react, our bodies and minds to react. And those are the stressors. But you know, the big one right now is COVID, and then you have civil unrest. It's rough. It's rough, and you have to, as a trainer, and not only as a trainer, but just a corrections professional, learn how to deal with this. And it's not a something in a pill bottle you just take out and pop a pill. This takes work to deal with your stress and so forth. But if you go into corrections, now here's some of your stressors: fights and assaults. I've talked to POs. I've done stress classes for POs and say, yeah, when that person's in my office and I say, I'm going to revoke you, they get up, they want to fight. But it happens in institutions, happens on field visits, missed appointments if you're a PO. I don't know in the class today who's a probation parole officer, but you have it rough too. Field visits, and you get out of that car and you're looking in the neighborhood and you're going, okay. Inmate suicides, mentally ill inmates. And I know in my jail, we had, well, I know when I worked there, I dealt with a lot of the mentally ill inmates. And in 2015, we had an inmate pass away in the jail who was mentally ill. And this is something corrections is dealing with. We are the de facto mental hospital for communities, jails and prisons. And POs, juvenile, my wife retired from a juvenile center. And I said, did you ever have juveniles in there with mental problems? She goes, oh yeah, oh yeah. Lawsuits, being sued. I can't see a show of hands, but I usually ask the class when I'm in person. I said, how many people have been sued? And some of the hands go up. Hands go up. Suing is one thing, winning is another, as we know. And environment of the facility. I know in the Fairfax jail, it was very, very clean, well lit. We gave the inmates things to clean with and so forth. But I do consulting, and two of the jails I did consulting for in the last 2 years out in the western part of Virginia were built in 1969, and that's 51 years ago. And they keep them clean the best they can, but they're old iron bar jails. And one of the jails had a mentally ill woman in their seg cell. She thought demons were coming out of the floor, and she ripped up the linoleum on the floor. She just started ripping it up, and they had to deal with that. They couldn't leave her alone. They had to watch her every couple of minutes. And sometimes the environment, or my college class asked once, well, what stress do you? And I said, well, hey, I get my coffee and my Krispy Kreme. I don't eat a donut every day, but I get my coffee. I'm heading to the office. I'm walking past the segregation cell, and a mentally ill inmate has decided to smear bodily waste all over the four walls of the cell. They have him in restraints. He's screaming. I walk down the hall. There's another mentally ill inmate that has not showered. He's refusing to come out and take a shower. He's yelling and screaming. And I said, that's all in the first 60 seconds when I report for duty. So I said, some of it is the environment of the facility. And if you're working in a facility where it's clean and it's kept clean and so forth, that's very commendable. Well, as you know, the clientele, the prisoners, the inmates, they can affect that environment and so forth. So the environment, we come home and we like, my wife says, when you come home, it should be your stress-free zone. And I said, yep, that sounds good. But when you go to the jail, the prison, or the PO office, and you see what's waiting in the waiting room, the juvenile center, sometimes the environment can stress you out. Now, if you talk about the stress reaction, it's in the book. I go into a lot of detail, changes to respiration, vision, heart rate, etc. But the key thing, you must have the adaptive energy, because we can all think of times we've been stressed out. It could be an inmate fight, everything's good on your floor, you look into a cell block, there's two inmates squaring off to fight each other, or there's an all call, you got to run and help somebody. You must have that adaptive energy, because your heart rate goes up, your respiration goes up, your blood pressure increases. You have to be energized. You have to have that adaptive energy to deal with these things. And the 5 stages are, the reaction stage, you react to it, and then you appraise it. Like, what's going on? Your mind takes it in, you're seeing what you see, and then you mobilize. and you start taking action. You get on the radio, you call for a backup. You tell the inmates to lock in. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The response is fight or flight. Now in corrections, you don't go in right away because you could be injured. You wait for backup. It's not a flight reaction, so to speak. It's common sense. But throughout history, the evolution of mankind, when faced with a dangerous situation, you can either run from it or go in and fight that desire to run, and that's the fight reaction. But in corrections, as we know, we deal with everybody that whatever situation it is, we have to deal with it. And the key is to return to the baseline. And that's very, very important. And when you don't return to the baseline, I go into this in the book too, you start to become exhausted mentally and physically, which leads to burnout. And you never, ever get back to the baseline. You're always stressed out. You're always in that fight reaction, so to speak. And over time, the negativity can build up. And that's what happened to me. I was working in classification. I was becoming exhausted. I was working a lot of overtime. And then people would say, well, how are things in the jail? Oh, they suck. And I would complain a lot. I was becoming exhausted physically and emotionally. You get up in the morning, I got to go back in the jail. Didn't want to do that. And the dangers of burnout is you're cynical and detached. And when you become cynical and detached, that's dangerous because you search people. You're responsible for security. You have to read their body language. A PO with an angry client sitting across the desk, you have to be able to read that person. You have to be able to kind of figure out what's going on. But if you're bored, you're cynical and detached, your margin of safety goes down. And the bad thing about corrections too, burnout in corrections, is there's you don't accomplish anything. You just you hear people say, well, I'm just going to collect a paycheck, or they'll say how long till retirement, and they'll give you the years, the months, the days, the minutes, and the seconds, because they're tired, they're detached, they don't really want to be there. And not only are they not safe, but everybody that works with them safe. So you have people that burn out. And my story was that it's in the book, I burned out. I was going in, working a lot of overtime. They'd call me up to work, hey, can you come in? I'd come in, I'd work 12-hour days. I'd come home, the wife was asleep, the kids are in bed. And I got to the point where I just didn't want to be bothered with anybody. When I did have a day off, I just wanted to sit and watch TV. Was not very good. Was not very good. And burnout people become irritable. They become angry. They become apathetic. They're detached, which I spoke about, and they feel isolated. And that's dangerous if you're working in corrections. Now, another class I do is inmate manipulation. Do a lot of those classes, and I tell people, the attendees, I inform them that if you're isolated and burned out and detached, and you don't speak to your family, your coworkers, your supervisors about what's going on, what's bothering you, the inmates will be your new best friend. So let's say you're burned out financially. I can't make enough money. I can't make ends meet. And the inmates will be there to give you some good ways to make some extra money, like contraband smuggling and so forth. So also, when you're isolated, everybody stays away from you. People don't want to talk to you. They don't want to be around you. And we need each other in corrections. No matter where we work, we need each other. Now, there's no set rate of burnout among correctional staff. I can't predict with all my research who's going to burn out, who can't, or who won't, I'm sorry. But there's a couple of factors that predict it, okay? Support network. If it's ineffective or non-existent. So let's look at the support network. What kind of support do you have outside the job or on the job? Are you able to talk to somebody? You know, let's say you just handled an inmate suicide, or you just handled cleaning a cell of a mentally ill inmate who smeared bodily waste on the walls of their cell, and you've breathed that in. You've had to get a trustee crew to get in there and clean it up. You've had to go and restrain the inmate. You have to get them to the shower, and you have to I don't want to say you know, wash them down, but you have to get them cleaned up and everything. And you're dealing with this, and it's starting to get to you. Do you have a support network that you can talk to? Now, if your support network or people like yourself, like I go up and say, hey, Tom, man, that inmate was, yeah, this is a hell of a job, blah, blah, and he's griping the way you are, it's ineffective. But some people don't believe in, or they not to say don't believe in it, but they don't have, their support networks are non-existent. They don't talk to anybody. Negative surroundings. Negative surroundings. I've always believed the old adage, you know, your home is your castle. I heard that growing up in Pittsburgh. But I've always believed when I walk through the front door, if I have pleasant surroundings and the place is clean, it's not cluttered, I can relax, that's good. Now, stress management techniques we're going to get into in a few minutes. And this has an effect towards family, friends, coworkers, and offenders. Even offenders. There's some inmates that I worked with and dealt with that were pretty decent people, and they did what I told them. We got along. But if I'm the kind of burned out officer or worker, it says, leave me alone, and I put a little expletive in there, people are going to leave me alone. And we need each other. So burnout is very, very serious. And it can also lead to fatigue. You're tired. And that came up a lot in my research, the correctional fatigue. Fatigue. Okay. Now, I found this study, 2012, and these are the difficulties police officers have, and you could translate them into corrections, time management. And when I do a rookie class, the newbies, they're in the academy, basic training, I start talking about how, as a jail officer, you are a juggler. You juggle this, you juggle that. You juggle feeding, you juggle counts, you juggle diffusing arguments, you juggle security checks, you juggle searches. That's corrections. And POs, juvenile workers, same thing. And you have to manage your time. And difficulty maintaining personal relationships. You go home, your significant other says, hey, honey, how was your day? Oh, leave me alone, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, they'll leave you alone. And it'll fester. Also, supervisors. Now, I do a supervisor class, and one of the things I talk about is that you have to get along with your supervisors. Now, we've all worked with supervisors we don't like, right? But they're good supervisors. They're there for you, and you have to be there for them. You have to communicate with them. But if a supervisor walks up and you're having a bad day on the floor and you're feeling burned out and the hell with this job and all this negativity, and your lieutenant walks up and says, hey, Gary, how's it going? Oh, just fine, sir. Just fine, sir. That's not good either. You're holding it in. Difficulty reading danger signs and concentrating. And this is law enforcement, police, corrections. You have to be able to read danger signs. Are you going to catch them all? You're human. Probably not. But you have to be able to concentrate. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, it comes up. We know a lot more about it now, but it is a serious problem in corrections. In a recent study, Washington State correctional officers, 19% reported PTSD symptoms. And the study also said nearly equivalent to military veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I salute everyone who's donned the uniform and served our country. And when some of them come back from overseas, Iraq and Afghanistan, and they've experienced so many horrible things and been in combat situations, you can have an idea of what they're going through. And a recent study in Washington State said 1 out of 5 COs reported symptoms just like that. 6 times higher than the general population. And that's not good. And prison workers, high rates of mental illness. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not saying that that you're going crazy or anything like that, or you're certifiable. But I'm thinking like depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, physical health issues. And if you can't see a show of hands on a webinar, but some of you have probably seen the movie American Sniper. And I use a clip of this in class where there's Bradley Cooper did a great job. Clint Eastwood directed it, about his PTSD. Chris Kyle, when he came home after every tour in Iraq. And there's one scene that I use where and you probably remember this, where he is sitting in his living room and his wife says, "Hey, the kids and I, we want to go somewhere, you coming with us?" And she's trying to get him to do something with the family. And he's sitting in an easy chair, and you think he's watching a war movie on television, and he has that 1,000-yard stare. And when the camera swings around, when Clint Eastwood, the director, swings the camera around, Chris Kyle is staring at a blank screen because his mind was always back in Iraq, the stress, the combat, and so forth. And some people unfortunately end their lives, or the divorce rate, it's a problem. That's the scene right there, if you can see the picture. It builds up a lot of, it's a buildup of a lot of scene, a lot of experiences, mostly dangerous and negative. Now, I worked in a jail. I did not work in a prison, but there are some days in that jail that'll stay with me the rest of my life. Seeing an inmate trying to kill himself, the mentally ill inmates that I dealt with, I'll never forget them. The key is they're always going to be in your memory. They'll always be part of you, but what are you doing to counteract it? And PTSD, you report for duty in battle mode. That's what the study said. You're in battle mode. You're constantly on alert, difficult to wind down, fatigue sets in. And when you get off duty, what are you doing to counteract that? And that's what, as trainers, you have to discuss that in a class. And some of these things are inmate stabbings, COVID-19, mentally ill, deaths in custody, self-mutilation, being attacked, colleagues attacked and injured, or the death of a colleague. These things, you never forget them. You never forget them, and they stay with you forever. And they can tear you down, your personal and professional lives down, how you interact with others, how you feel. And flashbacks, memories, nightmares. You could dream you're back in that situation, feeling cut off from others, uncaring about things and people. You're like emotionally numb, feeling threatened, endangered, looking over your shoulder. You know, the old joke is, where do cops and jail officers, where do they sit in a restaurant? You sit in the back of the restaurant facing the door, because you always have that, you're always feeling kind of alert. Depression, anxiety, and suicide, it's a horrible disorder. Focusing on sleeping, difficulty focusing, sleeping, personal relationships suffer, and substance abuse. And this is from Dr. Richard Lum. I found his study from State University of New York in Brockport, and he let me use his material. And it's a pretty good study that he did. So what do we do about all this? You're a trainer. You have to do a stress class. Okay. Well, there's negative coping. And if you're coping negatively, you feel like you're in a vice. There's crap on the job, crap at home. You take time off, but nothing gets done. In my burnout time, I just want to sit and watch TV and leave me alone. Nothing looks good. No one understands. Very easy to fall into that mindset. Sometimes short-term relief is alcohol, drugs, overeating. Don't exercise. Don't do anything good for you there. Smoking and vaping, and I did put some research in about vaping. I'm a former smoker, quit a long time ago, one of the best things I ever did. And during my stress times, I smoked. And the old proverbial, leave me alone. And the fallout from negative coping, your mental and physical health will suffer. And I put into the book a Florida study that was done released in 2011. And law enforcement officers in the state of Florida, the average age of death was 62.4 years. The general population average age of death, 74.2 years. So law enforcement officers, including jails and prison officers, were dying 12 years sooner than the general population. And if you're working a 25, 30-year career and you come out in your mid-50s, and say you're 55, and you're statistically, do you really want to die at 62? So the negative coping, your health will suffer. Some people, it's drugs, drink. There's no quick, easy way to feel better, but they feel good. They're not good for you, shortcuts. Relationships will suffer, arguments, abuse, domestic strife, separation, divorce. We have to have good relationships. So you're a trainer, you go into a class. I ask the class, what choice are you going to make? Because the first half of the class is all the negative stuff. And then we take a lunch break. And during the lunch break, I have them do an assignment. I said, what are you going to do nice for yourself? I'm going to give you I give them extra time for lunch, and you got to come back and say what you did. Well, some people say, well, I went and relaxed in my car and listened to some of my favorite CDs. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Some people say, well, we're all friends here. We went out to lunch and we didn't talk about the jail. That's good too. But the thing is, only you can decide, and there's a couple of key questions. Do you like the way you're living your life? And I don't ask for a show of hands. I just want them to think. Do you want a happier personal life? Am I healthy mentally or physically? And you don't want to get too personal, okay? Some classes you have supervisors and line staff in the same class. I tell them I don't talk out of school. If you want to share something, that's fine, it stays in the room, and I make sure it does. But the thing is, those are key questions that you should have to bring up as a trainer, and because this job will chew you up and spit you out if you let it. Now, so you get them thinking about positive coping, which I go into in the book too. And there's appendices at the back that's going to have a lot of advice. Decision must be made by you to improve the quality of your life. I can't make it for you. You got to look at the quality of your physical health. Am I overweight? Am I smoking too much? Can't catch my breath. Do I have headaches? Am I getting enough sleep? The quality of your mental health. Am I tired? I don't want to do anything with anybody. Hey, quiet time's good. I'm not saying don't have quiet time. But if you don't want to do anything with your family support group or anything, that's not so good. Quality of life overall. Longevity, strive to retire, because everybody wants to retire. And one of the stories that I say, and I've just started to talk about this, my wife passed away in 2003, and we got through my burnout. and we got through my stress phase, and she was there for me. But the thing is, when I'm talking to a class, and I really am very, very quiet, and I'm very plain speaking, and I say, one of the things that I think of, I wish I had more time. I wish I had that time back, but it won't come back. So you have to make the best of your life, and that's what stress management is. Okay. Now, positive coping. Intimate relations are okay. Rearranging your house. My wife now is a former, was in her late husband was a military officer, and she likes to rearrange the house. So if I go on a trip and I come back, the house might be rearranged. That's the way she likes dealing with her stress. In fact, when you go to Home Depot and you pick up sliders for under the furniture, you know what's on her mind. Okay. But sometimes rearranging the house is good. Or taking up a physical hobby or a mental hobby. I like to read. Also, I'm a history buff. If there's a historical site somewhere, I'll go see it. I like that. That's my mental hobby. And I love to read, and I love movies. Physical hobby, exercising, walking. Some of you play golf. Taking a nap. A friend of mine, a client of mine, she retired, but she said that, she gets so worked up all day long, what she had to do. She worked for an academy, and her doctor said, take a nap. And she said, well, I get home and I'm all worked up. She said, I'm not saying to sleep. He said, if you fall asleep for a half an hour, great. But he said, just rest. Just rest. And I know you can't do that on the job. The sheriff walks by and he sees you, in your office and you're sleeping. No, you can't do that. But on your day off, let's say you do some stuff around the house and you want to relax, take a nap. It's okay. Getting enough sleep, especially when you're, and I asked what else can you think of? So we have an open discussion. I talk about eating healthy. Now, I'm not saying, eat rabbit food and grass and tofu and all that. Hey, I like a pizza like anybody else, but try to eat healthy as often as you can. Getting up and moving, taking a walk, yard work. I used to do yard work. I got in the habit of after a stressful week at the jail, Saturday was my yard work day. And after I did all my yard work, cut the grass, trimmed, mulched the whole bit, weeded out everything, tended my vegetable garden, I could sit there with a cup of coffee or a nice cold drink or an alcoholic beverage, depending what time of day it was. And I could sit on my patio and I could look at that and I felt good. Quit smoking. Exercising. And exercise, you don't have to join a gym. You could just walk, aerobic walking, or take your grandson with a basketball and shoot hoops. It doesn't take a lot of money. Time management is important, and there is a chapter in the book on time management. But what you want to do is when I'm doing a class and the attendees get very, very quiet, you tell them you want to avoid the I used tos. And if you're familiar with Kenneth Gilmartin's book, emotional survival and law enforcement, he talks about the I used tos, which I put in the book. I used to see my kids more. Used to be in a relationship. Used to be married. Used to see my friends and family. And you want to avoid, I used to exercise. I used to get out of the house. I used to have hobbies. I used to have a life other than the job. So, and the last one is, I used to give a damn about my job. You want to avoid the I used tos. Okay. Now, in closing, you got a class. Hopefully you're using my book. Hopefully you get the book, and I appreciate it. If you do, it'll be out in a few months. But make your life plan. And that's the last chapter of the book. Take the mirror test. Look in the mirror. You like what you see? Are you tired? Are you smoking too much? Are you overweight? Are you not eating well? Do you get headaches? And then I get a little abstract here and I say, look in the mirror and then envision all the people standing behind you that are important in your life. Your wife, significant other, soulmate, your kids, your mom, your dad, your family, your friends. What do they see in the mirror too? And if you make goals, should be smart, specific. I got to lose weight. Measurable, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next 3 months. Agreed to. Let's stick with weight as an example, okay? As you get older, it's harder to come off. But if you go talk to your family and say, look, I got to lose some weight, so if it's okay with you, let's not have these Saturday pizzas for a while and so forth. They're reachable and timed, okay? Smart goals. Look at how you think. And I had to do that. I had to look at myself. And in my burnout case, I went and talked to the major of the jail. After, my wife and I sat and talked, and she said, well, why don't you go talk to Major who so-and-so? And great guy. And I told my lieutenant, and I told my captain, because I believe in chain of command. And I said, I'd like to talk to them about transfer. And I told him a little bit about what's going on. And I went and talked to the major, and he arranged a transfer for me to go into work release, community corrections division, and get out of the jail, because I had worked in that jail almost 10 years and I was burning out. But we sat and we talked. And it's another thing, if you're a supervisor and you're talking to somebody that's stressed out, a subordinate, put down the phone, turn away from the keyboard, fold up the papers, put them aside, and that person needs to talk to you. And I tell my supervisors class, they are the most important person in the world at that time. And they need to be treated that way, because people need to talk. Relaxation. It's relaxation. Not going to work today. I work at home. Not going to work today. Sunday afternoon's my relaxing time. Football starting, Steelers. I like movies. Finding out what works for you. And that you have to find out what works for you. Reach out, don't hold it in. And when asked the magic answer when asked the magic questions. And what the magic questions are, things like, if I see a person that's burning out, stressed out, something's really bothering them, as a friend, a supervisor, a colleague, a family member, I go and say, are you okay? Is everything all right? Is there anything you want to talk about? The magic questions. And they could be from your significant other, your supervisor, friends and family, your pastor, employee assistance programs, which are good. Making your life plan, self-awareness, how you react, self-management, how do you handle it? And this is from Mike Bottaro, American Military University. And social awareness, do people don't want to be around you? How you influence others, be a role model. If you're a trainer, be a role model. And communicate, don't commiserate. Because people don't like to be around people that gripe all the time. Now, if you look at that last picture there, I always had my class with a picture of a casket, which is really, a fun thing to do, right? But anyway, I end the stress class with a casket, and I say, nobody gets out of this life alive. And somebody said, well, you could be in an urn. And I said, okay, yes, I could be in an urn. Okay, right. But nobody gets out of this life alive. And when people are filing past your casket, did you put things in perspective? Stress did not have to rule your life. It didn't have to make you a bad person. It didn't have to kill you early. But I do ask them when people are filing past your casket. And I'll use me as an example. I'm going to die someday, okay? Hopefully way down the road. And I'm laying in my casket, and people that I worked with and my family, they're all filing past. I want them to say, hey, Gary Cornelius was a decent guy. I liked his classes, gave good training, really contributed, but I don't want them to say he was a real jerk. You know, this guy was burned out. You know what he used to gripe all the time? You want to leave a legacy. You really want to leave a legacy. And that's why I put that picture up there. Hopefully we're all going to live a long time. It's how we live, how we treat other people, how we take care of ourselves. And that's what stress management is. Okay. And I really thank you for thank you all for your attention. I know everybody's busy, got things to do, and Jim is going to monitor inmate visits. Wow, that's something I did in person. I was telling him, but I really thank you for your attention, and Michael Jones and Iactp for letting me do the webinar. I'll let everybody know when the book's coming out. And your comments are welcome. And for assistance, there's my contact information there if you want to jot that down. And training doesn't stop when you sign off the webinar or end the class. It's ongoing. So if anyone has any ideas or you need some advice, please, please, please give me a call to get a hold of me. Michael?
Hey, Gary, there are a couple of comments and questions in the chat box that you may want to take a quick peek.
Okay, let me go to chat box. Where do I do that? Little right here. Okay.
Should be like a little dialogue bubble icon that you can click on.
Okay.
So John Schuford was asking about emotional intelligence training and for supervisors.
Okay. I'm looking for the chat box. Okay, where do I go again for that?
Next to where the participant icon is, there's a little dialogue icon. Just click on that.
Oh, got it. Okay, Mike, it's a great presentation. Okay, thanks. Emotional intelligence, yeah, you have to really look at yourself. I think Kenneth Gilmartin's book is really, really good. But you have to, emotional intelligence, the best answer I can give is to see how the stress is affecting you. And we're all intelligent people because we're working in corrections. What can you do to counteract it? Emotional intelligence is important. How the job is affecting you, what it's doing to your life, and you have to take steps to counteract that. I hope that answers your question. Gary, do you remember Francis Cheek's work? Don, hey Don. Yes, I do, and I put some of that in the book too. Any other questions? Emotional intelligence is good. Yeah, how is the job affecting you emotionally? Some people, it's spending money. They're spending too much money. They're going broke because it feels good to go out and get rid of your stress by shopping, but you got to pay the bill someday. I would check out Gilmartin's work. Any other questions here? Thank you, Don, for your comments, and Jim.
Gary, Brian asked about any possible resources on trauma-informed care that you could share with folks.
Trauma-informed. I didn't catch the last word.
Yeah. Any resources on trauma-informed care?
Okay, you're saying like PTSD, is that what you're asking? I believe. I would go to the American Psychological Association. Also, check out Dr. Richard Lumb, L-U-M-B. He was very, very kind to let me use his research, and he did that study on PTSD, which is very, very good. I would go there. Also, on trauma and so forth, there's an organization in California called the Counseling Team. It's online. Nancy Bowl runs that. I met Nancy years ago, but she's done a lot of work with stress. I would check those two resources out. Richard Lum is on his studies online, and the Counseling Team, you can go ahead and contact them.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I really see in there, Gary. I appreciate your time today.
Okay. And thanks. And let's see, anybody that, if anybody would like to contact me, please do so. I know in a webinar you cover a lot of ground, and we're coming up on the end of an hour, and people have to get to places and so forth. So I appreciate everybody's attendance and their attention. And please reach out to me at my email or cell phone. Be glad to talk to you.
Thanks, Gary. Great work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Great work.
Thank you. Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.